Coming up on this week's episode of the EV Resource Podcast, Nikola responds to the allegations from Hindenburg Research. Tesla has their battery day coming up, so I wanted to lay out some of the expectations for the event. The Lucid Air sets a new record around Laguna Seca, and more. Well, hello, friends, and welcome back to the EV Resource Podcast. My name is Zach Hurst, and each week I bring you the latest EV news, information, and answers to your questions about electric vehicles. Special thanks to Titan Auto and Tire in Moseley, Virginia for their support for this podcast. Titan is one of the very few independent shops in Central Virginia that are qualified to work on EVs and hybrids, and from hybrids to Hummers, they fix everything. As always, the week has been packed with EV news, so let's dive right into it. Now, before we get to the headline of Tesla and their upcoming battery day, I wanted to quickly address the update to the situation with Nikola and the allegations from Hindenburg Research. Nikola on Monday published a press release where they outlined a rebuttal to the allegations from Hindenburg that Nikola had lied about their products and generally misled investors. According to Nikola, they believe, quote, that the Hindenburg report and the opportunistic timing of its publication shortly after the announcement of Nikola's partnership with GM was designed to provide a false impression to investors and to negatively manipulate the market in order to financially benefit short sellers, including Hindenburg itself, end quote. Now, since then, Nikola has contacted and briefed the U.S. Security and Exchange Commission, SEC, regarding concerns pertaining to the Hindenburg report, and they say they intend to fully cooperate with the SEC regarding its inquiry into the matter. And in turn, the SEC is now working with the Justice Department and the U.S. Attorney's Office in Manhattan to examine whether Nikola misrepresented its technological development for the new models. Now, as I mentioned last week, I felt that it was important to hear both sides of the story before passing judgment. We had heard basically Hindenburg's report, of course, was available at that time, but we didn't get an official response from Nikola. Now, as to Nikola's rebuttal, many people, and myself included, found that the main allegations by Hindenburg were weakly addressed and in some cases actually confirmed what was being accused. In short, Nikola admitted that their Nikola 1 prototype semi-truck was not actually capable of driving under its own power and didn't even have a motor. Hindenburg had said that the Nikola 1 was a pusher, and to most people, that would be an accurate description. However, Nikola responded by saying, quote, a pusher means a vehicle that is not designed to be moving under its own propulsion system. The Nikola 1 was, in fact, designed to be powered and driven by its own propulsion. Well, they're really focusing on a technicality there by saying designed. If you remove the word designed from that definition that they provide, then it is very much a pusher. It is not something that is capable of being powered and driven on its own propulsion. So it's you take that word out of it and it's definitely true. The Nikola 1 never was capable of driving on its own. And now Nikola says as they pivoted to the next generation of trucks, they ultimately decided not to invest additional resources into completing the process of making the Nikola 1 drive under its own propulsion. So basically, they built a prototype, they got just to this point and said, let's go make something else. But instead of being very public about that, they made videos and had events and showed how great this truck was. Isn't it wonderful? And even the video itself that I shared last week of the truck rolling down the hill, Nikola claimed that the Hindenburg report seemed to portray them as misleading the capabilities of the Nikola 1 in that video. In that report, Hindenburg said that the truck was, quote, simply filmed rolling down a big hill, end quote, which that's true. That is absolutely true. We know that's true at this point. Nikola's response was that they never stated the truck was driving under its own propulsion in the video, and they say, quote, although the truck was designed to do just that, as described in the previous point, The truck was showcased and filmed by a third party for a commercial, and Nikola described this third party video on the company's social media as, quote, in motion. It was never described as under its own propulsion or powertrain driven. Nikola continues to say that investors who invested during this period in which the company was privately held knew the technical capabilities of the Nikola One at the time of their investment. This 3-year-old video of a Nikola prototype is irrelevant except for the fact that the short seller is trying to use it for its main thesis. The fact is, Nikola has real working hydrogen fuel cell powered semi-trucks. Any reports intended to suggest that Nikola's trucks do not drive are erroneous, and recent videos of Nikola's vehicles driving can be found online, end quote. Now that last part by Nikola, I actually do agree with. Not about their response to the video. I think that's a load of crap. But they do currently have prototypes that do drive on their own, the Nikola 2 and the Nikola Tre, and I think I mentioned that last week. They say that all of their investors, when they were privately held, knew that the Nikola 1 was not capable of driving on its own. So if that's the case, then I'm going to give them a little bit of leeway there, because it doesn't matter what the public thinks if the people that are actually putting forth their money at that time knew about it. What I think is important is that now that Nikola is a publicly traded company, that everybody should have an accurate understanding of the company's history and what the previous vehicles were or were not capable of. And myself especially, and really I think anybody that would have watched the video made that assumption that the Nikola 1 was driving under its own power. I think that's a safe assumption to make, and I also would propose, I guess, an assumption that Nikola was intending for people to think that it was driving under its own power. You can't prove one way or the other there, but why would you make a video like that if you weren't trying to send that message? But I said this was going to be quick, so I'm not going to rant. To end this segment, I think it would appear that Nikola says they aren't lying because of technicalities, and I think that is a load of crap. Not that anybody cares what I think, but now that we do have both of the sides of the story, what do you think about it? I'll put both a link to the Hindenburg report and Nikola's rebuttal in the show notes. And if you guys leave a comment on the YouTube channel or on social media or send me a message, I'd love to hear what your thoughts are regarding this story now that we have heard both sides. All right, now on to probably the main reason why many of you clicked on the YouTube video. Tesla's Battery Day is coming up, and it's hard to imagine this much excitement building for any other manufacturer in any industry having an event to talk about their improvements in production and supply chain practices. We have been waiting for this event for months, maybe even a year since its original announcement. And the event was originally supposed to take place earlier this year, but has been significantly delayed because of the COVID-19 pandemic. And now it's only 2 days away, this coming Tuesday, 4:30 Eastern Time, 1:30 Pacific PM, of course. And we will find out about Tesla's plans for the future of the batteries they are going to use in their products. And I say products because I want to really emphasize the point that Tesla operates in more than just the automotive space, specifically with residential and grid-level battery storage systems as well. Now, the most important part of our expectations are centered around Project Roadrunner, Tesla's secret but not so secret project to develop their own battery cells. Now, before we dive into this, it's important to note that Tesla has already made it clear that they aren't going to sever current partnerships with Panasonic, CATL, and others for battery cell production. Tesla's biggest production constraint is with battery cells, and they want as many of them as they can get, even more than what they can just develop themselves. So this is an addition to the cell production that they're working with, not a replacement for it. Elon himself reinforced the need for battery cells in the Q2 earnings call back in August.
The real limitation on Tesla growth is cell production at an affordable price. That's the real limit. So we're going to talk about a lot more about this on Battery Day because this is the fundamental scaling constraint.
Now, to get to a point where Tesla can manufacture their own cells, they made some very important acquisitions that helped give us an idea of the roadmap for their intentions regarding their own battery cell production. The first, and arguably the most exciting acquisition, was in May of last year when they bought Maxwell Technologies. Now, Maxwell, while known most for their work with ultracapacitors, has also had a patented dry electrode technology, and that is likely the main reason that Tesla was interested in them. This is significant because usually when making a battery, it requires a wet process that uses a lot of toxic chemicals and, more importantly, a lot of time and factory space to allow the wet rolls to dry out before continuing the battery production process. So with Maxwell's dry electrode technology, Tesla will be able to manufacture batteries more quickly and more safely, all while using less floor space. It's a more efficient process all around. The second acquisition that Tesla made was of a Canadian company, Highbar Systems. This was specifically important because Highbar builds the machinery that is used to build batteries. So by buying Highbar, Tesla was very clearly reinforcing the message that they have the intent to build their own battery cells. And Tesla absolutely needs to build their own battery cells if they intend to serve the demand of making millions of electric vehicles every single year. So by vertically integrating, getting as much of the process in-house, they can limit relying on supply chain partners and limit cost and ultimately reduce supply reliability issues. But more importantly, they can now maximize their ability to innovate quickly. So the first major expectation that we have about the details about Project Roadrunner to be revealed is to say that first, Tesla is developing and likely already producing their own battery cells, and that second, they are exponentially better than anything available on the market today. Now, I want to talk more about the battery cells themselves because there has been a number of leaks that have indicated what we might be able to expect. Electrek, actually earlier this week, recently published an exclusive first look at photos that are confirmed from multiple sources to be of Tesla's new battery cell. Electrek says that Tesla is keeping the specifications about the cell close to its chest, but that they were still able to find out a few new details about the bigger cell. The new cell is much bigger than Tesla's 2170 cells that they currently use in the Model 3 and Model Y. And making a bigger cell makes a lot of sense because you can gain a lot of capacity while reducing cost with fewer casings and fewer cells per pack. And fewer cells per pack is important because that has the power to significantly increase overall pack energy density. Tesla and Elon have talked previously that the reason that they have smaller cells that then go into battery modules, that multiple modules then go into a pack, is because early on, Tesla wanted to be able to swap out modules. I think it was especially on the Roadster, the original Roadster, if there was a problem with an individual cell or an individual module. Well, Tesla now doesn't really have the need to do that because they have improved their process so significantly that the battery cells are much more reliable. So with these bigger battery cells, they could put maybe a fourth of them inside the pack of the car, eliminate the module aspect of it entirely, therefore taking much better use of the space, limiting weight, and having an overall pack energy density that is much more significant. The benefit of this would then be to increase range and lower weight of the cars, so that makes them more efficient. Furthermore, the photos that we see from Electrek show a tabless cell, which is something we know Tesla has been working on. Earlier this year, Tesla applied for a patent to have a new battery cell with a tabless electrode, and Elon actually hyped that as being way more important than it sounds. So on top of the cell capacity improvements of having a bigger cell, the lack of the tab reduces cost and simplifies manufacturing. Now, more importantly, when using this with a bigger cell, this reduces the distance that electrons need to travel. If you have a bigger cell, electrons have a larger distance that they need to travel. Well, that increases resistance, and resistance in electrical systems actually create heat, which obviously is a very bad thing when you're talking about batteries. So the tabless design reduces the distance the electrons need to travel, which then would limit the resistance and limit that heat, ultimately allowing for better thermal management, even though the cell is bigger. So we can definitely expect to hear that Tesla cells will be bigger and incorporate this tabless design. I think that is a very safe assumption to make. But in addition to that, we're expecting some possible changes that, yeah, you could probably say are breakthrough changes on battery chemistry. There's been a lot of rumors going around that Jeff Dahn, who is a world-renowned battery expert, has been working closely with Tesla to develop better battery chemistry. Now, Jeff Dahn had recently released a paper entitled Diagnosing and Correcting Anode-Free Cell Failure via Electrolyte and Morphological Analysis. Now, this paper explains that anode-free battery cells are lighter than traditional cells and can store more energy per volume. The problem traditionally has been that this chemistry can also lose capacity quickly and tends to have a shorter life cycle. So, according to Inside EVs, Don's team has apparently learned how to take advantage of the anode-free battery cell's positive attributes while making sure that the typical negative attributes don't exist. Now, I won't go further into the battery chemistry side of all this because it does get very technical, and that is not really how I want to handle the podcast. You know, I want this to be something that even newbies to EVs can follow and understand. So I'm not going to get caught up in all the details, but I only referenced this point to indicate that Tesla is likely going to reveal massive improvements to the chemistry of the batteries that they are or will be using, or maybe are using. I mean, Tesla is known to innovate and make little improvements over time, so it wouldn't surprise me if they've changed the battery chemistry of even the 18650s that are used in the Model S and Model X. Now, related to the Model S and Model X, I want to talk next about the tri-motor plaid powertrain configuration that we know Tesla has been planning and they already have used in the Model S. We had a chance to see it lapping the Nürburgring later last year. But since then, Tesla's kind of been quiet on the project and we haven't gotten many updates. So the timing of Battery Day seems like it would be an excellent opportunity to revisit this and even give an update on possible production timelines for the next-gen Roadster, which is also going to use that powertrain. Now, ultimately, I can speak for probably many people when I say that I have never been more excited about a reveal event on something that's not even a specific product. I mean, this is crazy. But knowing Tesla's history for wanting to blow our minds, I can only imagine that even the few points that I've said isn't getting close to touching on the extent of what is going to be involved on Tuesday. I'm sure there's much, much more that's going to be involved. And honestly, I can't wait to recap all the details with you on next week's episode. Or even though I might have to make a separate Battery Day only show just to cover all of it, because I expect it's going to be a lot. But I wanted to touch on the main points. Any of you that are wanting to watch the live stream, you will be able to find it on Tesla's website, and I'm sure a lot of other media and news outlets are going to be covering it as well. Okay, next, and I know I've talked about the Lucid Air a lot recently, what with their reveal and trickle of information before that about different record-setting capabilities of the car. Well, now this week, they have now set yet another record, this time at Laguna Seca Raceway in California. This report coming from Teslarati, Lucid's tri-motor configuration for its first vehicle, the Air, has now set an unofficial lap record at the historic Laguna Seca Raceway in California. The Air reclaimed the record from the Plaid Mode Model S, which set the record in September of 2019 after completing the circuit in 1 minute 36.555 seconds. This week, a video from the Kilowatts on September 17th, so a couple days ago, showed raw footage of the Lucid Air tri-motor variant running spirited laps at Laguna Seca. According to Ryan from the Kilowatts, the lap was completed in 1 minute and 33 seconds. This is an unofficial time as of right now, but if correct, it will beat the Model S Plaid powertrain by just over 3.5 seconds. Now, something a lot of people don't know is the Lucid Air initially set a record at Laguna Seca back in September of 2018, 2 years ago, when it completed a lap in 1 minute and 47.67 seconds. Much, much slower. Now, that time has been overtaken many times. Records are something that are only borrowed. You don't hold a record for very long, usually. And I believe first it was overtaken by the Jaguar XE SV Project 8, which at that point set an all-time record of 1 minute and 37.54. Then the Model 3 performance broke that record, which bested the Jaguar by 0.04 seconds, putting in a lap at 1:37.5. And then, of course, as previously mentioned, the Plaid Model S arrived on the scene shortly after Tesla announced its existence, setting that record of 1:36.555. Now, Teslarati believe that it appears that Lucid's deliberate withholding of its tri-motor powertrain was effectively a jab at the company's attempt to one-up Tesla. Rumors have circulated for some time now that Tesla could, as I mentioned, we're expecting it, but could reveal the release date of the Model S Plaid powertrain at the company's upcoming Battery Day event. Like I said, that's probably something that we will see. So Lucid may be anticipating this announcement and looking to spoil any plans that Tesla has of being quote-unquote the best. Now, we don't know. Maybe Tesla has made many improvements to the tri-motor Plaid powertrain since initially revealing it. But for now, at the current moment, the time that the Lucid tri-motor powertrain themselves is not official, but it's certainly an unofficial record. All right, so 3 more news stories from the week, and then we'll wrap it up. The first of all being Ford is now testing the Mustang Mach E all-electric SUV in Norway. According to Clean Technica, Ford is now testing its hot new Mustang Mach E electric crossover SUV in Europe. Naturally, the first place to take the electric vehicle is Norway, where approximately 70% of new vehicle sales are now electric or plug-in hybrid. That's where Ford has been playing around with the Mustang Mach E, and the results are looking good. Towards the end of a long press release filled with fluffy marketing language more than anything else, Ford shared that the all-wheel drive model with a targeted WLTP driving range of 335 miles exceeded energy efficiency expectations, traveling 301 miles nonstop from Oslo to Trondheim, finishing the journey with 14% battery capacity remaining. Not too shabby, and that's not even the extended range trim, which Ford expects to get a WLTP range rating of 379 miles. Furthermore, Ford's charging specs have gotten better. Latest testing shows that charging time has improved by nearly 30% from early estimates, reaching an average of 73 miles of range within 10 minutes using the Ionity fast charging network when equipped with an extended range battery and rear-wheel drive. Overall, though, Ford's message in its press release about European testing is pretty simple. The Mustang Mach E drives really well. It has a useful low center of gravity due to the big battery on the bottom, because of course it's an electric vehicle, and Ford considered both basic physics and Tesla's decade lead in the market when designing it. It has great torque because, once again, it's electric. Though aside from that, it was the less obvious benefits that touched on the accompanying video that caught the attention of Zachary Shahan with Clean Technica. Depending on what mode you drive it in, the lighting changes. The soundproofing is highlighted as noteworthy as well, and Zach says he's curious to check that out, especially because the soundproofing in his Model 3 seems rather weak on fast roads. Overall, since it was revealed, he says that he thought the Mustang Mach E has a winning true 21st century package and that the electric crossover may prove to be a big item in Europe. Whether testing on frozen lakes, in searing deserts, or using state-of-the-art driving simulators, Ford's engineering teams worked across the globe to develop an all-electric Mustang Mach E that delivers a true Mustang driving experience for customers around the world. Sticking with Ford, but moving on to their prototype all-electric Ford F-150 pickup truck, Ford this week released a video of some testing that their prototype is doing with also towing a trailer. In the notes on their YouTube video, they say, tough testing on the all-electric F-150 prototype continues. When the production model arrives in mid-2022, it will be purpose-built for Americans who need to get the job done. And that's a very distinct point. Ford is already marketing the all-electric F-150 truck towards people that are on the job, workers, fleets that are all currently using the gas-powered F-150 pickup truck as a work truck. They are not following the same marketing campaigns and target market, really, that Rivian or Tesla are with the Cybertruck or the R1T. Their trucks, especially the R1T, is marketed as an adventure vehicle. So this is for the people that want to go off into the mountains for the weekend and go camping or off-roading, where the all-electric F-150, Ford is definitely not focusing on that area, even though it wouldn't be surprising to see many people using it for that as well. Now, I've said many times previously on the podcast how important this vehicle is for Ford. The F-Series is the #1 selling vehicle in the United States, so Ford has certainly got to make sure that when moving to an all-electric powertrain, that they do it right. And the last story for you this week comes from Jalopnik, and they're sharing that Rimac, the Croatian electric supercar maker, is in talks with Volkswagen to acquire the Bugatti brand. They say apparently Volkswagen is tired of spending boatloads of money on Ferdinand Pike, I guess that's how you say that, hobby horses. And this is apparently also so that Porsche can get in on Rimac. Car reports that in an ideal world, Porsche would swap the Bugatti lock, stock, and barrel for a bigger share of the Rimac action. How big? Well, the target is 49%, which could be a tough nut to crack, but the Germans are keen on assessing as much know-how and brainpower as they possibly can. In exchange, Rimac would obtain the Bugatti brand and the related infrastructure, which looks like the perfect stepping stone for that tiny Volume C2 hypercar. In July, Rimac paid a visit to Bugatti in Molsheim and reportedly walked away impressed. If the supervisory board signs off the agreement, the current Bugatti CEO, Stefan Winkelmann, is unlikely to stay. When asked for comment, neither Winkelmann nor Porsche boss Oliver Blume replied. Carr also reports that a number of VW brands could possibly be offloaded or at least are under some measure of scrutiny, including Lamborghini, Seat, Bentley, and Ducati, in an effort to centralize VW's focus on all things electric and autonomous. As for Rimac, it remains the Tesla of Europe, if Tesla only had 600 employees and only made supercars, which isn't to insult Rimac so much as to say that Rimac has earned a lot of admirers from other automakers. It'll be interesting to see what it will do with Bugatti if and when this is all finalized. All right, so that's your show for this week. Thank you as always to everyone who supports EV Resource, either simply by listening or sharing with your friends, and especially those who support us on Patreon. You can find us there at patreon.com/EVResource. Our Patreon executive producer is Tom Wiggins. Thank you, Tom, very much for your support. If you're new to the EV Resource podcast or been with us from the beginning and have a question about electric vehicles, I invite you to submit that via email to hello@ev-resource.com. Of course, you can always leave a comment on the YouTube channel, and don't forget to subscribe so that you'll get the future shows delivered to you automatically. If you want to listen to any of the previous shows, you can find them on our webpage under the podcast section and on any of the major podcast platforms. But that is all, so thank you very much for being with me, and I'll catch you next week.